EOS 301 students. I hope your quick semester is going really well. I'm just quickly making this video to give you a little support and information on your upcoming assignment concerning the creation of hypotheses and the use of experimental methodology as a way of testing your hypothesis. So in this assignment, your expectation is to choose from one of the 5 topics that Dr. Woodall has outlined for you. This includes casualties of war, democratization of countries, education spending, support for President Obama, and effectiveness of negative advertising. I'm going to take on casualties of war as sort of an example of a way that you might approach this assignment. I do encourage you to do a little background reading on your subject to make a logical and sort of cogent hypothesis. Even though you might have a theory, you want it to be grounded in the literature. I know we've talked about that quite a bit, so some background reading is going to be important for you to do. So if I take on casualties of war, I know that the literature does have some discussion about some relationships between maybe an independent variable and a dependent variable. In my hypothesis, I am going to hypothesize that video of soldiers returning home in coffins, or images of soldiers returning home in coffins and being casualties of war, decreases support of foreign war. And so in this hypothesis, maybe take a minute to consider what my independent variable is and my dependent variable is. So it is, my dependent variable is support for war, and my independent variable relates to images of casualties of war returning home. So again, this is a hypothesis that has a relationship between 2 or more things. And I might even complicate the issue even more if I were to take it further. In this case, I would really recommend that you keep it to not probably more than 3 relationships. I would keep it pretty simple for your own benefit as you logically think through these ideas. You want to state how they're related. So my relationship said it decreases, right? It decreases the support for war, or public support for war in this case. And so the relationship is there. This is not a question, right? I am asserting something. I am making a case that this is what this will be. And I can test this with empirical evidence and be linked with underlying logic that makes sense. Well, this was something that was in the public discourse for some time because during our initial Operation Iraqi Freedom periods and some of these kinds of war efforts that we had during the George W. Bush administration, we were censored in these images of soldiers returning. And so there may be some idea that if the public is seeing images of soldiers returning, not returning alive, it maybe gives a little bit more meaning to the numbers that we maybe hear arbitrarily on the news. So there is some underlying logic that informs this hypothesis. So here's the critical link that you need to make, right? You've been looking at various methodologies. We've talked about various different designs that you can have and various different ways of testing those designs. The experimental methodology is a very particular methodology. So you want to make sure you're really well versed on what that is. To give you a little bit of a clue, it typically happens in a laboratory, or it happens somewhere where you as the researcher have a high degree of control over exposure to the predictor, to the independent variable. So you control it. And so it might be that I would draw a sample of participants and invite them in to an experimental lab, one of which that we do actually have at our School of Politics and Global Studies. And I might split my participants into two separate groups that are equal in demographic and representation, and I would then expose, one group to information about soldiers returning, just sort of numerically through maybe print media or this many soldiers died in battle, let's say, and then I might expose my other my other group to images of coffins draped with the flag and funeral and all of those kinds of things, and see if there's a difference in approval before and after. And I would likely, in fact, probably would, do pre and post test. So we have a measure to sort of know where we were prior to exposure or non-exposure, right? My control case would be the one that wasn't exposed to the variable, and see what the movement was after exposure to the variable. So in an experiment, I have a high degree of control in the exposure to my independent variable. A lot of times, social scientists, particularly when you're studying phenomena outside of an American context, but maybe in other countries, are limited in being able to do something such as this. And the other portion of this assignment is to really think about problems of internal and external validity related to experimental designs. You actually tend to have a higher degree of internal validity. So internal validity can be thought of as sort of, did my experimental treatment make a difference in this experimental instance in this case? So did the experiment do what it was intended and designed to do? Am I testing what I'm saying I'm really testing? And external validity is sort of, how generalizable is this to outside of this controlled environment in which I'm testing it? And so you're going to want to think about whatever design that you use. You're going to want to think about what some of the threats of internal and external validity might be. Because remember, no model is perfect, right? We strive as best as we can to control as much as we can, but we are limited. So I hope this helps to clarify some of what the assignment is and what the expectations are. Remember that the experimental design is different from the quasi-experimental design, is different from other research methodologies that we might have. So surveys are not typically experimental designs. Polling are not typically experimental designs. Your pre and post test in the lab is part of your experimental design, but is distinct. So these are things to really try to make those distinctions and start to understand that these are different types of methodologies. Yes, you need to make sure that you write a minimum, probably more than 2 pages double-spaced, but be precise with your words. You don't need to throw in extra words unnecessarily. We'll know relatively quickly if you're understanding the concept, which is what this is all about. It's to take what you've been learning, particularly because you're in an online class, and apply it into your own particular research design. So I hope you enjoy it. It gets really exciting to start playing with your own ideas and your own questions that you have about the political world. And there's so many to answer. So I hope that you enjoy answering them, and I look forward to reading what you have to offer. I wish you all the best, and we'll be grading soon.